Well, today, what we are talking about is, quote, a sign or the sign of power. It grants access like few things do. It determines who is in and who is out. People sacrifice the well-being of their family for this. Health is compromised in pursuit of this. Integrity is surrendered because of this. Boundaries are crossed because of it. Power is exchanged because of it. Voices are silenced because of it. It has a life of its own, animated by the principalities and powers of the world. What is it? The great preacher Rich Viotis tells us that it is money. That's right. We're back for part 2 of our first series of 2026. Money shouldn't make you miserable. And you all are the brave ones. If you were here last week and you came back, you tuned in, congratulations. Or you just showed up today and you're like, what did I just get myself into? Either way, I am glad that you're here. And as a reminder, we here at New Life Community, we are not fundraising for anything special right now. We will not be passing a plate at the end of the service to collect a special offering. That's not why we are talking about money this month. Rather, we are talking about money because it's a big concern for many of us. For example, the second most popular type of New Year's resolution after fitness and health goals, which congrats to anybody who owns a gym out there, are financial goals. People say things like this: I want to create a monthly budget and stick to it, or I want to pay off that debt, or I want to start a side hustle so that I can save up for that vacation. Millions of regular, ordinary people like you and I have entered the year with these kinds of aspirations. The trouble is that surveys find that by mid-January, motivation tends to drop a bit. In fact, the second Friday of January has come to be known as Quitter's Day. So that was actually this past Friday. So happy belated Quitter's Day to everybody out there. Congrats on that. Here's what this demonstrates. Real change is hard, right? We all know this. And there's something about financial holes and ruts and worries that can feel especially hard to dig out of. And I showed you last week how stressed today's parents are by finances, but you can observe the trend more broadly. This is more than just parents. The latest polling of Americans' personal finances, this is reported by Ramsey in September of 2025. The latest data reveals that half of U.S. adults, 50%, worry daily about their personal finances, and 37% of these are losing sleep over it. So I wonder this morning, is this you? We don't have show of hands or anything, but have you lost sleep already this year over money? Were you worried at some point this weekend or in a conflict related to money? Or can you remember the days when you used to be, right? Before you had breakthrough, can you look back with compassion on a younger version of yourself who is just learning about some of these things? See, these concerns weigh on all of us in different ways and to differing degrees. And one of the biggest reasons, though, that I keep pressing in on is that because we as a society, whether you're a church person or not, we struggle to talk about money. This isn't just a preacher's opinion. Host of the enormously popular I Will Teach You to Be Rich podcast, Ramit Sethi, summarizes the current situation like this. The million-dollar question, according to this Stanford and Oxford educated expert, is, why is money so hard to talk about with the people we love? Well, if you think about how we treat money, especially in America, it's actually no surprise. Parents rarely talk about it to their kids. The only phrase that they typically use ever is, we can't afford it. And as you grow up, where do you learn about money then? From movies, from TV shows, maybe? So imagine this. You get to be 25, 35, 40 years old, whatever the number is, and maybe you get into some kind of relationship. You yourself rarely have a point of view on money. Like most of us, he says, have a point of view on food. We know what type of food we like or what type of food makes us feel good. We don't have the point of view on money, though. Then you partner up with someone who equally doesn't have a point of view on money, and suddenly we don't even know what we're actually talking about. It is a very difficult way to go through life. I don't know about you, but I resonate with a lot of this quote. This describes a lot of my life in trying to talk about and handle money and sometimes trying to just make it through. And this is why I am so glad that Jesus shows us a much different vision of life, which comes with a different understanding of finances. See, from a place of love, we double-clicked on that idea. That was our main idea last week. If you haven't listened to it, go back and listen to it. But we double-clicked on this last week. From a place of love and understanding of people, Jesus talked about money both openly and often. And you don't have to take my word for this. Just read any of the 4 Gospels yourselves and just notice how often Jesus has the money conversation with people. Experts would guess conservatively that about 15% of all of Jesus's recorded curriculum of teaching, as it comes down to us from thousands of years in our Bibles, 15% of it has to do with money. Now, sometimes he's using money as an illustration of something deeper or heavenly or something like that, but he wasn't afraid to talk about it. So that means if Jesus was our guest speaker 1 out of 6 times, we would assume he'd be preaching about money. Or if we just followed the Jesus curriculum, how often should we talk about money? We'd give about 2 months of Sundays every year, just if we wanted to pace ourselves with how often Jesus brings this up. So this is something that Jesus understands and talks about. And this morning, we're going to be looking at part of Jesus' most famous of teachings, one of the most influential speeches ever recorded that is often referred to as the Sermon on the Mount. Not Carey Nieuwhof points out the Sermon on a Mount. Don't worry about that. But a Sermon on the Mount. And I was researching this, and I was sitting with Jesus' words again right at that beautiful time last week where the rain had come. And so there was just a beautiful vision of the mountains all around. And I was thinking, okay, this is a great time to talk about what did Jesus say when he went up and gave his followers a teaching on a mountain. Today we're going to jump into the talk in Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. I want to point out Jesus has a lot to say in this sermon. You can read the whole of Matthew chapter 6. The way that I try and do my best, we're going to pull out one chunk, just 3 verses of this larger series. Because Jesus in one sermon says a whole lot of things. We're just going to drill down on 3 of these verses today. He says, "Don't store up treasures here on earth, where moths eat them and rust destroys them, and where thieves break in and steal." Now, back in Jesus' day, people had money problems that we can still relate to, that very much resemble our own. What happens? You work hard, you buy something, and it sort of degrades, right? It gets worse over time. It loses its value often. You pull something out of your closet, an old favorite sweater, and you realize that moths have eaten through it. You ever put your fingers through and felt those little holes, right? Or you realize that trusty phone or laptop that you used to use and rely on every single day a decade ago now is essentially obsolete and useless, right? You used to use that thing every day. Maybe you paid top dollar for it, but now it's been designed in some cases to be obsolete. It doesn't get upgraded. It doesn't get used. It has no value. It's sitting in a closet. Anybody happen to have any Beanie Babies lying around in a drawer still? You guys remember there was once a time, these were collectibles. These were stores of value that were supposed to increase in value. And I have to be honest, I do wish that I used to have my original Pokemon cards, because those have kept their value. But alas, you can't win them all. Here's what Jesus is saying. Jesus is saying, we all work hard and worry a lot about accumulating stuff, things that naturally tend to degrade or that can be stolen from us by others. In other words, Jesus said, sure, there's times that you actually get something and that thing accumulates in value. It's growing in value, but then someone takes it from you. Or an outside circumstance takes it from you. The stock market does something you didn't expect. You have a medical emergency, your industry changes, and all of a sudden your valuable thing is taken by someone else. Jesus says, is this not the way that the game goes that so many of us people tend to play on a daily basis? So instead of playing that game, Jesus continues on. Store up treasure in heaven, where moths and rust cannot destroy and thieves do not break in and steal. To get at the wisdom of this perspective, I want you to think about the show Storage Wars. You all seen an episode of this? Okay, very simple premise to the show. If you haven't seen it, here's the premise. These different people make a business out of going to old abandoned storage units where people have lost their value, they stop paying for it or whatever, and these things go up for bid. And then what you do is you bid for a unit, not knowing quite what's in there, and then you sell the contents of a unit. The profit is what you get, right? And basically, this show has had this sort of fun, interesting take on something that if we were to sit and think about it, is actually quite dystopian. Because what this show shows us is that essentially what we do sometimes is we pay for and collect things that we get so many of them that we can't afford space for them. So then we rent out other space that we're also paying for until we can't make that payment. And then we lose all the other stuff to someone else who profits from it and is going through our things. And this just happens regularly, enough that they're not canceling new seasons of the show. They're continuing to find places that this has happened. And I want to be very clear. I have had a storage unit that I have paid for in my time. And literally this week, we were finally putting away Christmas decorations, and I noticed we had to get a new box out for extra Christmas decorations this year. So I am not immune to criticism here. But what's the point? I imagine that Jesus today might say, don't store up for yourselves treasures that could be bought or sold on storage wars, but invest in those values and priorities that are going to outlive you. 4, we're already arriving at our last verse from Jesus. This is the big one today. Verse 21, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. And this is such an anti-American in many ways, countercultural, backwards saying. Because everything in our world teaches us that spending is a form of self-expression. Okay, a lot of people do this with cars. A lot of us think, if I buy this car, it will show the world the type of person I am, right? We all know people like that they buy a new car and it's like they got a new personality for themselves. They feel like they went off the lot with a new personality. Or as a guy, I won't speak on how this works out for the ladies in the room, but as a guy, I have grown up with the understanding that certain items, whether it be a watch or shoes or designer sunglasses, convey one's status to others. And so naturally, and I've been advised this by older men, they say like, listen kid, like they would say, my treasure should go towards investing in these things because it shows some sense of my personality, my style, and my flair to people. This would be just people just trying to say, businessmen, hey, you got to know how to dress the part. Now, I know some of us have different ways that we do this. I'll give you an example. It looks different. There are some young men out there that we would see they're spending a lot of money on their Jordans or their pro clubs or whatever it is, and we would look at them and we'd look at them like, oh, whatever, look at this kid spending so much of his money on that. But then I go and I have lunch with some well-to-do people out at the golf course, and I see the same thing happening out at Ridge Creek, just with different brands. See what I'm saying? See, it's really easy for an old farmer to stand there chewing on a straw and talking about consumerism, all the while he's got his custom cowboy boots and cowboy hat and big old belt buckle. Just all these kids these days. Here's the point. Different brands get us in different... You blue-collar workers out there, I miss you. Do we not do this with brands like Ariat or Carhartt? These trusted brands. This shows who I am, my tools, what brand they are. We do this. The point is this. It's not about which brands get us. Here's the point. There are targeted ads that target each of us differently. And marketers are great at this. They aim for our wallets through our hearts. They're not showing some of you some of these brands. You say, I don't even know what that brand name is. That's because the 15-year-old's getting all the ads for that. You're getting all the ones for the one that tempts you. And my algorithm looks nothing like yours. And yours looks nothing like me because they know how to get at us. Marketers know and study how we are more likely to spend when we are feeling stressed or sad, to spring for that product that we hope will improve our lives, and ads prey on this. And don't worry, you can buy right now with just one click. You guys notice if anybody does Amazon Prime, on Amazon Prime, you don't even have to add it to the cart anymore. Because who could possibly have to click to add it to the cart and then you have to click again on the top right-hand corner to actually buy it? No, you can buy now with just one click, right? Because maybe the advertisers don't want us to have a second to reconsider even. Oh, and by the way, if you don't have the funds today, don't worry. You can buy now, pay later. So you can pay for it next time. And then here's the thing. Even if you don't have the funds when it's due, don't worry about that. You can pay us again later, and this time we'll charge you a little interest. What is this whole game? It's a trap. That's what Jesus is saying 2,000 years ago. Beware. Watch out. Watch out for people who are targeting your heart to pull you in all of these different directions. Jesus' teaching this morning flips all of this around as he says, Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. AKA, where your spending is, there the desires of your heart will be also. Now, some of us wonder, what's the difference between what culture says, what Jesus says? This is something I'm learning. This is new to me. This is the first time I'm explaining it. Let me try and break it down one more time. Culture says this: let your heart take the lead, and your money will follow. Problem is that our heart is always telling us, ooh, look at that. That's a deal. Look at this. Wow. If I got that thing, that would sure show them. Our heart is all over the place. And so our money keeps going all over the place. Jesus says, no. Stop doing that. This is all so backwards. Jesus says, decide where your money is going and trust that your heart will follow. Here is the thing. Some of us in this room, the message is already falling clearly on spenders and savers. How many of you in this room would you identify you're a saver? You like to see amounts go up, tick up. Some of us are like that, right? How many of us, a lot less hands go up, but a lot more of us maybe are this. How many of us like to spend money, right? You like to get a good deal. You like to get that thing. You like the money to go out. Here's the deal. As we all know, a lot of times savers find spenders and get married to them, and spenders find savers and get married to them, and then you never have to worry about things to talk about for the rest of your relationship, right? But that's what happens. But what I want to jump to is, as we get to slide 31 in the back, as of November 2025, here's one for the savers out there. Nearly 1 in 4 Americans have zero emergency savings at all. 0. 1 in 4. It's all you savers out there that like to see. 1 in 4 of us have nothing. That's true, this number, by the way, of my parents' generation. For my generation and anyone younger than me, the numbers are actually much worse. Which means that statistically, there are dozens of us in a room like this, and dozens more of our children who rely on us, who we love, who we would say they have our whole hearts, that are one inevitable expense, one surprise medical bill, car repair, away from us being forced to borrow money or ask for a loan or stress over or scramble for money. And I understand this morning that it's not simple enough to just go on Google or ChatGPT and say, well, how many months of emergency fund should I have? And the experts are all going to tell you, you should have 3 to 6 months of costs in an emergency fund sitting. Some of you think, I can't possibly get it. That seems worlds away from what I could do not only this month, but this whole year if I put myself into that. I understand that. But here's the thing. All of us in the room have the ability, we adults, to decide that we're going to have more than 0 emergency savings. That's in our control. That's in our decision-making ability. And we need you savers out there to help us use our money wisely, to plan and prepare and save up so that we can live with freedom, so that we can be ready for the tough times that the Bible tells us are always going to come our way. Now for you spender types in the audience. Those of you who like to find a good deal, to put your money to work for you, it's satisfying for you to say, I spent that amount of money well. Well, arguably, one of the most gratifying ways to use money is to give it to causes that you are personally passionate about. So think about this. Roughly 33% of American households do not donate to any charity, church or otherwise, in a given year. Now, the average family gives about 2 to 4% of their disposable income. It depends on which surveys you look at. But 1 in 3 of us do not give anything, even for us spenders. We're spending money on a lot of things, but not on this. And here, again, I was once this person, right? So there's no judgment. Some of you who do not give financially are giving in other ways. You're volunteering of your time. You're showing up places and giving of your gifts, and that has value, and we honor you for that. But with Jesus' teaching in mind, again, it's Jesus who sets things this morning. Jesus says, wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will be also. It's hard to say, according to Jesus, that any cause or community or organization has our whole heart if we aren't actively contributing some way toward it financially. And we need some of you out there, those of you who enjoy spending money, to see it go to good work, to see how your money can make an impact in the world. We need you to release your money to go work investing in priorities and causes that life on autopilot will never fund. There's so many things that if we just wait until we have a little bit extra at the end, we'll never get funded. And we need some of you who know how to spend money well and see it go to the right places. Help us in this way. Because for savers and spenders alike, deciding where we spend our money can train and form our hearts. I'm going to give you 2 quick examples of how I've discovered this to be true in my own life. I have a friend of mine who was working in this nonprofit where part of what he had to do is he had to raise his own support. So he had to write letters and he had to do that. That was just part of what he was doing. And I remember I got together with him as he was starting on this, and he's doing great work, and he's telling me he's got to write all these letters and do these fundraising banquets or whatever. And so I came and I said, look, dude, like most of my money, like it's accounted for and whatever, but I said, I'll give you $20 a month. Very generous, I know. It's incredibly generous of me. But I said, I'll give you $20 a month. And here's the thing, I was worried. If I said 50, which I wanted to do, then I wasn't sure how long I'd be able to do that, frankly. But I didn't want to give nothing, and it felt almost insulting to tell him, I'm going to give you $20 a month. Like, it felt like, what's the point of the transaction fee? But here's what I learned in doing that. Every month, when I saw that $20 leave my account, I was reminded of him. And I reached out to him to encourage him. And it reminded me to pray for him and his family. And I started reading the newsletters because I was investing. They're sending me newsletters. So I'm learning more about the work. And I can tell you this, $20 at the time, after a couple of years of doing this, I felt my heart much more involved in the work than he was doing than it was in the beginning. Some of you are thinking, past $20, I can't pause. Okay, we'll go even smaller on the next one. I didn't get my first full-time job in ministry for many years. I was a pastor for about a decade working. I would work part-time in one church, part-time in another church, go to school, do all these different things to make ends meet. But when I got my first full-time job, I reached out to a family member and I said, as long as I'm working full-time, I want to give $10 a month. I know, incredible. $10 a month to your kid's college fund. $10. That's what I had. And I told him, I said, look, if I get fired, I can't do that $10. If I move on, if I'm in church plan, I can't do $10. If I'm working full-time, I'll give you $10 a month. Here's what I learned. Do you have any idea how invested I now am in that second grader's future college? Where he goes to school? What major he's in? Now, here's the deal. Am I ever going to pay for a year of tuition? No. But $10 compounding little by little, it is very possible that by the time this person is 18 and claims this money, that it will be the most expensive gift, valuable gift I've ever given anyone monetarily. $10 at a time. So will it be enough to pay for books? Probably. Will it be enough to pay for a laptop? Probably, or even a class. $10 at a time. As I learned this, my heart followed my money. I decided these are valuable things, and I put my money there, and I realized that my heart began to be formed by these things, $10 and $20 at a time. So I want to right now, we just have conversations around, we want to model talking about money. And so there's someone, a leader here in the church who has a strong relationship with this particular text. They talk about this text more than I do. And so I'd love to have them up here. So Brother Bruce, could you share a bit with us about this teaching from Jesus' life and why it means something to you? And we'll welcome Bruce to the stage. Everybody, let's give it up. Yeah, Bruce is back up. Come on up, buddy.
Brad, that is so good about put your treasure where your heart is. Before Laurel and I were married, I worked at a camp in Wisconsin. And the camp I worked at had missionary staff. So everybody worked at the camp had to go raise money to work at the camp. And that scared me as an 18, 19-year-old, 20-year, I guess I was almost 20. And I went to a conference with our camp, Christian Camping International, and it was with other camps, and there was a workshop on whatever day it was of the week in the morning, and it was on raising support for working at a camp. Mm-hmm. Well, that scared me, so I went to that workshop to kind of figure things out. And I remember the speaker saying, do you believe in what you do at your camp? And I did. I loved doing everything I did. I was programming. I was actually got to go sailing. I got to go skiing. I got to work in the kitchen. I got to go all these things. But I got to see kids make a decision for Christ at camp. And I got to see how valuable my time was. And I said, sure, I believe in what I do. He says, then why are you embarrassed about asking somebody to partner with you? I said, I'm embarrassed because I'm scared. I just don't want to ask. Why should I ask somebody about giving their money to me? He says, then you shouldn't be here. People put their treasure where their heart is. If you can ask them to say, this is a valuable ministry and it's changing the lives of kids, then why you're actually cheating somebody else out by not letting them know what it is so that they can't partner with you. Bruce, you're cheating somebody by being embarrassed. People put their treasure where their heart is. If they're not going to give to you, that means they don't treasure what you treasure. And that's okay. That's a thing, what we used to say, bless and release. That's okay. There's people that give. I went, as a Youth for Christ, I asked for donations all the time. I remember going to a business on East Main Extension, and I said, he's a Christian businessman, and I said, why don't you ever give? Because I know you're a Christian. He says, because I give to, and he named off 3 other organizations. He says, I don't give to you because I believe in these. I said, thank you. That was awesome. Yeah. I just didn't go back and bother him because I already knew that he was giving. Yeah. You put your treasure. Do you believe in what's going on here at New Life Community? If you believe it, then you put your treasure where your heart is. We're not asking. Dennis Agajanian did a concert once I went to, and it was a free will concert. And so at the middle of the concert, it was time for an offering. And he had everybody stand up. And he said, okay, it's time to give. And I want you to reach into the pocket of the person in front of you and give like you've never given before. I'm not asking anybody to do that. We're not asking about stealing from somebody else to get. No. Take out your wallet and say, where's my treasure? Where's my heart? If you don't believe in it, then don't give. But if you believe in it, then you need to give. That's what it's all about. It's where your heart is. The giving is not about money. It's about your heart. That's what I have to say.
Thank you, Bruce. Let's give Bruce a hand clap. Thank you, Bruce. Yeah, it's a fun thing. Look, money is part of our lives. I knew that Bruce has a strong relationship with this text because Bruce and I have had conversations together. Not about planning Sunday mornings, but just about life and his stories. And he's taken Jesus' words to heart. And I really appreciate the things that you've learned and have to share with us. Here's what I want to do. I want to just get very, very practical as we close out this text. The first thing I want to do, if we're trying to figure out spenders, savers alike, how do we put Jesus' teaching about money into practice? The first thing is this: decide to put some part of your money to work for you this week toward your highest priorities in life. So what this looks like is first to decide for yourself, whether individually, if you're a single person, or as a couple, what that priority is. Maybe it's emergency savings or a college fund or making additional payments on a certain debt that is accumulating really quickly. Or maybe it's contributing toward a nonprofit or church. If you're a person of faith, you can pray about that. And then decide how much that it is. Maybe it's $10 a week or $100 a month or a certain percentage of your income. All of us in the room are in different places, and I'm not here to tell you what to give. I'm here to tell you to trust Jesus' way with what you have. But I would then encourage you to actually go to an ATM, if that makes sense for you, or to go online to where you keep your money and to move it around and to put it towards what you are stating as your highest priority in that amount this week. Because here's the thing, even when we don't feel like doing those things, Jesus says, put your money in a place that the culture will never tell you to put it, where nobody can see it, but that moths can't eat it and rust can't destroy it. Put it towards your highest priorities and trust that your heart will follow. Second is very simple. It's to automate what's important. Here's the deal. If you get a loan for a car or eventually a mortgage on a house or a lease on an apartment, the banker says, fantastic, Mr. Isaac, here's going to be your payment, and would you like that on the 1st or 15th of the month? They do not say, hey, Mr. Isaac, when you get a chance, if you could just make out a check like in this amount, just whenever you get around to it, hopefully by year's end. They don't do that. It's automatically taken out. And so in a similar way, I encourage you with respect to these two priorities. If you are motivated to give, some of you are not, but if you are motivated to give, to automate your giving. Now, where you give, as Bruce said, doesn't really matter as much to me as that you are giving generously. And as I always remind people, I don't see who gives here at our church or who gives what as a matter of principle. So I don't know. You're not going to impress me if you're like, hey, Pastor Brad, I took your son. I won't even know. So don't do that. Don't do it for that reason. But I do want to encourage you, if you are among the 33% who never give, to just try and take yourself out of that category in the first month of the year to give and just see how that feels. How does that feel for you? How does that sit with you in your own heart? Just give it an experiment. And then in a similar way, I would say automate your savings, whether you're giving to or not. Any of us to an emergency fund, but also for other things, eventually a vacation or the ability to have safe transportation or for a down payment. At the very least, again, refuse to be the person out of 4 who has 0 saved up, because we can start that even in the first month. In the first month of the year, you can take yourself out of 33% of the population just by choosing to give, and you can take yourself out of another 25% of the population by just choosing to save. And this is what I encourage you. If you're starting, start there. Give first, save second, and then live on the rest. Again, these are not just my ideas. These come from tried and true tested curriculum by leaders who are much more generous and experienced than myself, and I'll show you that on the next slide if you're interested. This is from the Art of Leadership Academy. The last thing, though, for those of us here in Dinuba or nearby, sign up today for our one-day Foundations in Finance workshop. Usually the way that this works is it's a multi-week thing and it's a commitment for 6 or so weeks, but I know some of us just need to have the experience of talking about money and finding out how does our faith and our understanding of Jesus inform that. And so we're going to do it on one Saturday in a 3-hour block with the dear couple in our church, Ron and Norma. We're going to pay for lunch. We'll get you childcare if we need, but we want you to have this money talk and to bring whatever next step it is for you when it comes to money and you finding financial freedom. To have that conversation, you can sign up today out in the lobby. But I encourage you guys, I know that it is uncomfortable to talk about money. I know that a lot of us have an allergy, and that sometimes comes from real places, to talking about money with other people or in a church. But I want you to experience the greater freedom that Jesus has. And a lot of us worry, 50% of us worry every day about this. Many of us are losing sleep over this. And I'm just saying, this year, could we just try, if that's you, could we just try Jesus' way?